Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to create this tab interface using plain JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. It's very simple. You can just see it. Pretty simple. Let's see how we can do that. Alright, first let's go to codepen. Okay, we'll create a new pen and let's begin. So first, let's begin with our tab buttons, right? So we'll call that tab buttons wrapper. And inside this tab buttons wrapper, we have tab buttons. So we'll say button dot tab button, right? So we have a button. And we'll call this first button, we'll say a accommodation, and we'll say, we'll do that again. In fact, we'll just copy this. Great, so we have two buttons. And now we'll create the content of these tabs, okay? So we'll say tab content wrapper, and inside this wrapper we'll have the content for each tab. Let me change this. This will be packages. And now let's create the tab content. So we'll say tab content into 2. Okay, so I create 2, and then I'll say for the first one, h1, say accommodation. Great, and we'll put in a paragraph inside. We'll say flat villa hotel, yeah, and then we'll do the same thing for tab content, the second one, and we'll say h1. And we'll call this packaging, not packaging, packages. And then we'll say paragraph, and we'll say single, family, couple, I don't know. So now you can see we have two buttons here, and we'll turn these buttons into a sort of tab. And then we have two tab contents, but now you can see both of them. So we're going to have to adjust the way it's displayed on screen so that when you click the accommodation, only the accommodation will show. And when you click packages, only the packages will show. There's a lot of construction going on in the background. Hey, whatever. It just gets annoying. All right. Now let's set up the CSS. We'll say tab buttons wrapper, and we'll set the background color to hashtag F1 F1 F1. There, now you see that there's a background color. And now let's customize the buttons. So we'll say tab button. Sorry, that's a spelling mistake. Tab button, and we'll make this button look like it's a tab. So let's say border none, background color, again hashtag F1 F1 F1, and we'll say width is 150 pixels. Say padding is 10 pixels. Padding 10 pixels, that looks fine. Great. Then we'll say font size is 1 rem. Font size 1 rem. Then we'll say outline is none. Great. So now we have two buttons, two tabs. Now let's add we'll add a hover effect on top of the tab button. Tab button hover. We'll just change the background color. So we'll just say background color hashtag DDD. Okay, and now something isn't working. Background color hashtag DDD. That should be a class, the class of tab button. Now it hovers. Great. Then let's set up a tab button for active. Okay, so let's say if there is an active tab, say dot tab button dot active. If the tab is active, we're gonna set another color. Background color hashtag CCC. And right now you don't see anything. That's because we haven't provided an active class in one of the buttons. So if we provide an active class, now you see this is the active class. Now let's move on to these tab wrappers. I mean these tab content wrappers. Okay, so you should be displaying only one tab at a time. So let's see how we can do that. It's fairly simple. We'll just say dot tab content. First we'll put some styling to the tab content. We'll say all the tab content display none. So now everything will go. You don't see anything. We'll say, actually let's take that off. We'll say padding is 0.5 rem. Okay. We'll say border is 1 pixel solid hashtag CCC. Okay, so now you can see the tab content has the border. You can see where it is. Now let's display all of them. I mean, let's hide all of them. Okay, so now everything is hidden, but we only want the tab content which is active to be displayed, right? So we'll say display block. Display block. Now nothing happens because we haven't provided an active class to a tab content. So we'll say we'll provide an active class here. And now you'll see only the accommodation tab works. Great. Now let's see how we can switch this from accommodation to packages and then packages to accommodation. Now here's where we start with our JavaScript. It's fairly simple. We want all our JavaScript to actually function only after the window loads. So we'll say window.onload is equal to a function. And inside this function, we will call a function related to the tab functionality. And we'll call that function showTab. Or sorry, let's call it tabs. Now this tabs function we're using ES6 arrow classes over here. That's fine. Now this tabs function is going to add an event listener to each of these buttons so that when a button is clicked, we're going to ask it to do something. So let's see what that is. Let's say first let's grab all the buttons. So we'll say document.query selector all. We'll grab all the tab buttons. Tab button. And then we'll say dot for each of these tab buttons. We'll just call it button. For each of these buttons, we're going to add an event listener. Button dot add event listener. And the event listener will be a click. And we'll call a function called show tab. And there's something missing here. Show tab. Aha. Okay. Okay. Now let's create the show tab. So this tabs function is just to add an event listener that'll call a function called show tab, and show tab will actually be used to change the tabs. Basically, we'll be adding a class called active and removing the class called active from the tab button and the tab wrapper. Okay, so from the tab button and from the tab content. So let's say const show tab is equal to, we'll get the event from an event listener because we're going to be using that. And for now, we'll just say console.log e.target. Let's just see if everything is working. Let's bring up the console here. And if we click on it, okay. I forgot a parentheses. Now, should be working. Yes, so when we click packages, you can see the target is displayed in the console. When we click accommodation, you see accommodation is displayed, so it's working. Now we'll control the accommodation and packages tabs. Let's see how we can do that. So first we want to know what the click tab is. So we'll say const clicked tab is equal to e.target. When we click on a tab button, we want to cycle through all the tabs and see if the tab corresponds to the tab button, if the tab content corresponds to the tab button. One way we can do that is by setting a custom attribute in our HTML. So what I'm going to do is come up here and set a data-tab name attribute. I'm going to set this one to accommodation, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing for the packages one. Packages. Now I'll set this tab button tab name accommodation will be set to this tab. So we're giving this tab button and this tab content the same data tab name attribute. So when we're clicking on this button, we'll use some JavaScript to find the tab content with the same accommodation tab name attribute, and then we'll display that. That's the idea. So I'm going to do that for this as well, and this is going to be packages. Great. Now when we click on a button, when we click on a tab, let's cycle through all the tab buttons. So we'll say document.query selector all, and then tab button. Okay, let's work with tab content first, actually. Tab content. Okay, tab content dot for each. Actually, let's move this to the next line. Dot for each. For each tab content, right, and each tab content, we're going to apply a ternary straight statement to check something. We're going to say if the tab content's data name attribute, if the tab content's tab name attribute is not equal to the buttons, the clicked tabs data tab name attribute, then we're going to say tab content dot class list dot remove active. Else we're gonna say tab content dot class list dot add active. And that's fairly simple. So far what you can understand from here is that, when we click a button, we'll first store the button in this thing called click tab, and then what we're going to do is cycle through each of these tab contents, and then for each tab content we're going to see if the clicked tabs tab name, which is this, is equal to the tab content's tab name. If it is, then we're going to add a class called active. But there's one thing left to do. You can see that this button is not changing to show the active tab. That's again basically the same. We're just going to remove the active class. Okay, so we'll say document dot query selector all. Now we'll grab the tab buttons, right? So we'll say tab button. We'll say dot for each tab button. For each tab button, we'll add a ternary statement. We'll say if the tab button is not equal to the clicked tab, if the tab button is not equal to the clicked tab, then we'll say remove the active class from the tab button. Tab button dot class list dot remove dot active. Else we'll add the active class button dot class list dot add active. Active should not have the dot inside the class. It knows we're collecting classes. Okay, so now this should work. Yes. So now you can see that when we clicked on packages, we activated the active class for the packages content, which means we removed the active class from all other tab contents, and we added the active class to this packages content. We also added an active class to the packages button, and we removed the active class from all other active buttons, buttons that don't have the same attribute. That's all we're doing. Now we can just come back here, and if we want, we can add another one. We'll just say, come back here, we'll call this facilities, and we'll just duplicate this. We'll create another tab. Call this one. This thing should match this one, so we'll just copy that. Control C, Control V. Call this facilities, and we'll just name this. We'll give this pool, gym, sauna. Okay, and now you see facilities appears with pool, gym, sauna, packages, and accommodation. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. The logic is very simple. If you found this useful, like this video and subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.